Today, I will be attaining all trophies in my favorite game of all time, Max Payne. But before I begin, there are a few things worth mentioning. Max Payne is a game that was insanely ahead of its time. Coming out shortly after the movie The Matrix, the game utilizes the slowing of time, or bullet time, to avoid gunfire, as well as helping you be more precise in killing the bad guys. There was absolutely nothing like this game back then, and it still holds up now, with one of the most engaging stories ever told in a video game. I'm going to be playing the PS4 version, which is a port of the PS2 version. And let me tell you, for a game that relies heavily on frames, lights, camera, and cold-blooded violence, the PlayStation version is choppy at best. But this is not a review, and I've gone on long enough in this motherfucking intro. To make any kind of sense of it, I had to go back to the night the pain started. Straight out the gate, I started with the tutorial and realized that I could kill a few chickens with one egg. Translation: I could collect 3 trophies before even playing the main campaign. I located a secret room within the tutorial, earning me the weapons training trophy. In order to get my next trophy, I would need to spawn in some wise guys. I hit the button to spawn some in and performed a shoot dodge, killing 2 enemies in the process, and earned the trick shot trophy. And for my next trick, I would need to snipe 10 consecutive enemies without missing a shot. Well, good news! There was a sniper rifle in the tutorial with more than 10 bullets. I have to admit, this took me a few tries, but eventually I spawned in some bad guys, shot them dead, spawned in more guys, and then shot them dead as well without missing a shot, and earned the plenty to go around trophy. With these 3 trophies out of the way, it was time for me to go loudly into the cold, dark night with guns blazing. In Max Payne, there are 3 difficulties: Fugitive, Hardboiled, and Dead on Arrival. There's also a speedrun mode that's called New York Minute. In the beginning, I was only given the choice of the easiest difficulty, Fugitive. I began the journey arriving home to find my newborn baby and wife slain at the hands of a bunch of junkies. After taking these freaks to hell via the 9mm bullet train, the story would then advance in time, and I find myself at the Roscoe Street subway station. The place was filled with mobsters who were trafficking Valkyr. After doing a whole lot of shooting first and asking questions never, I met up with a fellow DEA agent and friend named Alex. It is then after a bit of dialogue that Alex is killed by an unknown assailant, and I am framed for the murder.
We gotta get out of here. If it's Lapino, it's... Alex? Alex!
There was nothing I could do. He was dead. I could tell by the empty, accusing stare of his eyes.
The cops were on my ass, and they were going to get real trigger-happy about it. I would need to make like John Rambo if I wanted to evade them unscathed. I had my sights set on a man named Jack Lapino, who was a mob boss largely responsible for the trafficking of Valkyr. I traveled to a local hotel that Lapino owned, that housed a few dozen of his lackeys. I pumped these good-for-nothing pieces of shit so full of lead that they each weighed 10 pounds more after they were dead. And when I had the opportunity, I lured a handful of them into a room and chucked a grenade, earning me the 4 for the price of 1 trophy for killing 4 enemies with 1 thrown grenade. A few hundred bullets later, I found myself chasing after a man named Vinny Gognitti. Vinny was the right-hand man of Jack Lapino, and I needed him to tell me where I could find Jack. Here's where things got interesting. In order to get the trophy quickest on the draw, I would need to kill 10 enemies during 1 use of bullet time. The problem was that my bullet time kept running out before I could even chew through 5 mobsters. And also, where the hell was I going to find 10 enemies altogether? Then I got an idea. About midway through Chapter 1, a bomb explodes and destroys Lapino's tenement building. I then need to platform between rooftops to look for Vinny Gognitti. It's during Part 1, Chapter 6, an alternate route, that I hatched my plan. At the start of this chapter, I dropped down a fire escape and passed by 2 junkies, then passed by even more junkies, then I ran into a bunch of mobsters. By my count, there were certainly more than 10. Aha! What if I could lure them all into one room, then throw a grenade, then quickly activate bullet time, and blow them all to hell during bullet time? Certainly that would count. I didn't see why not. So I got to work. I began this arduous task by aggroing the 2 junkies who were minding their own business, keeping warm over a barrel of fire. Staying out of the way of their gunfire, I lured them to a nearby building where the rest of the men resided. This tactic was very daunting, as the large amount of enemies would shoot each other trying to kill me. Not to mention the game dropping to a cool 12 frames per second in all the chaos. The odds were stacked against me, but I knew I could do it. And in a self-fulfilling prophecy, I figured something out. There existed a doorway in the building where all enemies would congregate if I led them there. And if I did it just right, they would stop there and not move. After 2 hours of trying over and over and over, I finally got it. Now, the only trophies left to get, at least in this playthrough, were 3 trophies for completing each of the 3 parts of the game. I eventually found Vinny Gognitti and shook him down for Jack Lupino's location. Jack was holed up in a gothic nightclub called Ragnarok. I'd been meaning to catch up on some reading of occult literature, and I've always wanted a big titty goth girlfriend. Unfortunately, to my dismay, there were no girls, just a bunch of men clad in leather, wearing sunglasses indoors. Finding my way to Lupino's den, I took out all his men and sent him to his favorite place, hell. Then I had to eat my words because a woman showed up who was a hired killer named Mona Sachs. She gave me a shot of some fine whiskey, and the stuff tasted sweet as honey going down. But unfortunately for me, it was laced with something that put me in the deepest sleep I had had in a while. I was then awarded the American Dream trophy for completing part 1. While this is my favorite game of all time, hands down, and I could definitely make an hour-long video detailing the story of Max Payne, I'm going to speed things up a little bit here. I descended into a nightmare. I was at my family home, but it wasn't how I remembered it. It was a labyrinth of twists and turns, and then I arrived at the marvelous blood trail platforming part. When I finally awoke, my head felt 10 sizes too small for my brain. I didn't know whether to be thankful for the much-needed rest or red with rage as I was strapped to a chair. I broke out of said chair and killed my captor, who was a man named Frankie the Bat Niagara. Then quite a while later, I killed a guy named Boris Dime. Then I ran through a restaurant that instead of having one oven, the entire restaurant was the oven, and on fire too. Having escaped the flames that wanted to extinguish my ice, cold, and slick heart, I went and confronted the trio at Punchinello Manor. After I killed them all to death, I was stopped by Nicole Horn. She was the CEO of a company called the Acer Corporation, and the one directly responsible for my family's death. Nicole administered me a seemingly fatal dose of Valkyr, and I slipped into yet another nightmare. This awarded me the A Cold Day in Hell trophy for completing part 2 of the game. Upon my awakening from another drug-induced power nap, I headed to Cold Steel Foundry. After putting John Wick to shame with the amount of bodies in my wake, I infiltrated Cold Steel, blew up the building and escaped with my life. Then I met up with a former friend named BB, and I realized he was the one who killed my friend Alex. I sent him to the afterlife with no last rites. Or lefts, for that matter. Now we skip ahead to the part where I infiltrate the Acer Corporation building, where I shoot an unstable antenna that falls on Nicole Horn's chopper, killing her in the process. I'd finally got my revenge, and my revenge was served cold on this dark and unrelenting winter night. I then earned the A Bit Closer to Heaven trophy for completing Chapter 3. Gearing up to play the game again on the second of 3 difficulties, Hardboiled, something strange happened. I somehow unlocked the End Combat game mode early. Typically, or so I had thought, you could only unlock End Combat after beating the game on Dead on Arrival, the hardest difficulty. I scoured the internet as to why I had unlocked it early and turned up nothing. Here's the part of the video where I assure you I did not use any cheats in making this video. You see, there were plenty of button codes in Max Payne for PS2, and if one were so inclined, they could acquire all 11 trophies quite easily, and quickly for that matter if they used those codes. A simple level select cheat can knock out a lot of these trophies, but I owed it to my 11-year-old self to do this video honestly. I didn't ask any questions and completed End Combat pretty quickly, earning me the End Combat trophy. This posed a strange conundrum, as completing End Combat would negate the need to play the game on the hardest difficulty, Dead on Arrival, as there is no trophy for doing so. I felt really weird about it, so I vowed to later complete Dead on Arrival as well as End Combat. Now it was time for me to play the game on Hardboiled. Not much to report except for the jump up in difficulty and the need to dodge shots and use bullet time more frequently in this mode. I played through the whole story without too many issues and nervously geared up to complete the game on New York Minute, or Speedrun mode. Completing the story on Hardboiled earned me the Feel the Pain trophy. You see, the reason I was nervous is because I had never attempted this challenge, and I had thought back to the times I played this as an 11-year-old kid and throughout my teens, always being way too intimidated to take on the challenge. It was time to conquer a fear that was 22 years in the making. Ready, set, go. Now, in New York Minute, each scene starts with a 1-minute timer, and sometimes longer depending on the length of the level. Each enemy you kill will award you more sand for your hourglass, so to speak. Things were going well. Too well. Suspiciously well. I was laughing at how worried I was about it and was shaken awake to a grim reality. Upon beating the game on this mode with a time of 1 hour, 26 minutes, and 37 seconds, I was 30 minutes under the par time of 56 minutes and 23 seconds that was required for the under par trophy. 30 fucking minutes! I had to shave that much off of my playtime to hope to overcome this challenge. I tried and tried again, even playing through with only 1 or 2 deaths. But still, I was coming up short. I walked away in frustration and put this challenge and essentially this video on the shelf. Then something bad happened. I found out that James McCaffrey, who was the voice actor for Max Payne, had passed away from cancer. I don't want to trivialize the death of an amazing actor or make light of the situation, but this affected me greatly. I again found myself thinking back to when I was a kid and how this game was the perfect escape from reality. So in that regard, I had my mind made up. I owed it to the memory of James McCaffrey, someone whose voice was a source of respite in my childhood. And even if the video got 100 views and nobody cared about it, I had to complete this challenge. It was time to feel the pain all over again. I started studying speedruns from years ago, and more specifically a speedrun from a YouTube user named Ritter. Ritter employs all kinds of fancy tricks, including a super jump tactic, which makes Max jump about 3 times his normal height. But the main takeaway from Ritter's video is that you need to make like Limp Bizkit and keep rolling. Literally, you need to side roll through most of the game and treat the combat as a secondary thing, killing enemies only if you have to in order to advance or to award yourself more time. The great thing about side rolling is that it doesn't spend any of your bullet time. You're also way harder to hit if you spam it over and over. At first, I found it very hard to pull it off with the analog sticks of the controller. It seemed like even if I was a hair off, and I mean like little bit, I would end up jumping straight in the air instead of rolling. I got better at it and employed the roll tactic as well as the super jump tactic in hopes of nabbing the trophy. Still, I kept coming up short, and then I had a really good run. And the super jump thing was really cool, but in this final run, I actually decided not to do it anymore, as rolling through the levels took me less time than it would to super jump over obstacles. I had made my way to the Acer Corporation and killed Nicole Horn, but was 9 seconds off. 9 freaking seconds! Surely I could shave that off. I knew I could. The good news about this mode, even with all shitty PS2 port-related obstacles, is that you can load a chapter and it will still retain the time on the clock from when you initially started that part. I loaded Part 3, Chapter 8, a one-way demon ride, and started chewing ass and kicking bubblegum, rolling on through the enemies like it was an Elden Ring boss battle. Then I ran into a pretty funny glitch. You see, since side rolling slows down time, I had kept a cutscene with Nicole from starting. I quickly made the discovery that I needed to take it old school and just run up this final staircase. This worked, and the cutscene took place as usual. I again had the satisfaction of watching this demon bitch burn. When it was all said and done, I had a time of 56 minutes and 22 seconds, awarding me the under par trophy for being 1 second under par time. Phew! I was pretty emotional at this point. No, I wasn't crying, but I was overcome with a dose of the small amount of serotonin left in my brain. My teenage self was applauding my now 33-year-old self. Again, a challenge 22 years in the making. And again, I assure you, I did not use any cheats. It was certainly the most frustrating video game challenge I've ever put myself through, and side note, not to float my boat, but I still haven't been able to find a video of somebody doing this on the PS2 port without cheats. Even the countless trophy guides I read were like, yeah, just do it with cheats because it's really hard. The only thing left to do was play the game on Dead on Arrival mode and complete the end combat, for real this time. Dead on Arrival was certainly a step up in difficulty, but it gave me some much needed breathing room after the balls to the wall speed rolling I had been doing earlier. But I was getting blown away a lot more than I thought I would. I would need to improve my use of bullet time to better chew through the enemies with my ass intact. Upon reaching the end and crashing Horn's chopper, I was immediately thrust into end combat. In end combat, there are a bunch of killer suits coming from the back of the arena on the left and the right side. It seems intimidating at first, but the big thing to note is that you have infinite bullet time until you kill all of them. I made light work of it, as I had been conserving ammunition pretty well. Not to mention, I'd started off with 3 rounds in my grenade launcher.
They were all dead. The final gunshot was an exclamation mark to everything that had led to this point. I released my finger from the trigger, and then it was over.
Thank you all so much for watching, and please consider subscribing for more videos just like this one.